Hey, welcome again to another session of Beyond the Title, where we speak with exceptional leaders with extraordinary experiences. Now, joining us today is Susan Pratchett, the Managing Director of Virtual Media for Western Europe. Hey, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. Really, really nice to be in touch.
Oh, it is amazing to have you, Susan. It's amazing to have you. And you've recently joined the Vice Media family as well.
I have, yeah, I've joined about 7 months ago now. So I moved from New York, where I was with Droga 5, out here to Amsterdam to join the Virtue and the Vice team out here. So I look after Western Europe and the countries in Western Europe and based out of Amsterdam for that.
Wow. And you mentioned a few months ago. So given that we've been in this lockdown period for about a year now, have you had the chance to sit down with the team or even have that face-to-face connection with this new team that you have?
Definitely not as much as I'd like. So I was actually lucky when I first arrived in Amsterdam. It wasn't fully locked down at that point. It was sort of over late summer. So it was very early August that I arrived. And so the city was still reasonably open. So the office itself wasn't open, but I was able to sort of connect with some of the team and we did some sort of meetups and drinks and that sort of thing. But then I think towards the end of August or early September, everything really did sort of shut down properly, so meetings over a certain number and that sort of thing all stopped, and it's been pretty much entirely Zoom meetings since then. So yeah, it's been a strange way to start a new job for sure.
I think one of the most used apps I've had in the last 1 year has been Zoom, and my calendar app, just to keep me a bit more structured there. But Susan, you've had this amazing, extraordinary career through the last through your professional life. What has been your philosophy? What is your Ikigai that gets you out of bed every morning?
For me, it's really about well, actually, on a very practical level, the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is having to walk my dog. But on a more philosophical point of view, I think for me, it's really I'm always hungry for the next challenge or sort of the next adventure and sort of seeking that out in everything that I'm doing. I guess the more brutal side to that is I do get bored quite easily if I'm doing the same thing over and over. And the thing that really keeps me energized and motivated is finding sort of the next problem to solve or the next sort of thing to launch myself into. That's the thing that I find really inspiring and keeps me motivated.
I love that. A challenge, the next challenge, the hunger to excel at it. Amazing, amazing. And if life were a movie, and I'm thinking of Avengers now because you are talking about jumping on challenges. If life were a movie, which character would you like to play?
Oh, can I choose Wonder Woman here? That feels a bit obvious, doesn't it? It's just hard
It
not
would be an
to.
amazing character to play, yes.
Do you know, I think actually what I would love, and this is a little bit out of left field, I've forgotten the name of the actual character, but the role that Gwyneth Paltrow plays in Sliding Doors, that thing where she has this moment in time that completely changes the trajectory of her life. And so you see both of these stories playing out side by side, if she'd got onto a train or if she hadn't got onto a train. And it's just one of those things that I've always been really fascinated by, the big and the small things that play into the direction that your life goes. Some of them are your choices, some of them are choices that are made for you or just the way that life goes. But that ability to sort of see the duality of what might have been, I find really, really interesting. It's the kind of thing that whirls around in my head at night when I'm trying to get to sleep.
Keeping in mind the sliding doors. Now the question is, if not Amsterdam, if you're still in New York, or if not Amsterdam, if not Vice Media, where would you have been?
Oh, that's a great question. I was definitely ready for a new adventure, and you'll see that's a theme I come back to frequently. You know, I would probably still be in New York right now. I think there was this role at Virtue, and coming out to Amsterdam was just truly a case of all of the stars aligning. You know, it felt like the right career move. I was keen to get back to Europe. It was a kind of extraordinary team and opportunity. I suspect if something hadn't come along that was as perfect, I probably would have stayed where I was for a little bit longer. But I am very nomadic at heart. So as much as I loved New York, as much as I loved my time at Droga, I probably geographically would have been thinking about somewhere different, whether that was somewhere else in the US or kind of China or something like that. I was in the back of my head, it was just starting to bubble again. Every 2 or 3 years, I start wondering about what the next city might look like.
Awesome. You were talking about apps just behind, before we got on, we were talking about apps and things we would. What apps actually do keep us structured and sane? Now you've had this amazing whirlwind of being in Amsterdam, new place but a new team, new challenges, new adventure. What's that app that keeps you sane and structured?
Do you know, it's actually probably the simplest app of all. I use my notes app relentlessly. I'm a real list person, and if there is something buzzing around in my head, I have to write it down or jot it down. Otherwise, it just keeps coming back to me. So the Notes app for me is an absolute godsend, because it just means that I've got this kind of constant list of things, like thoughts, things that I need to do, sort of longer term stuff. And then once I've written it down, it clears it out of my head, and I know I can come back to it. But certainly I use it all the time for work, but when I was sort of moving and there was so much to think about, and that you're sort of forgetting things and you're jumping from one thing to the next, it was a real sanity saver, actually.
I love the part of Notes where you can actually check it from any device anywhere in the world, right? It's so beautifully connected, so you don't need to carry on everything when you're trying to get back to those notes. Amazing. Any new ideas bubbling in your head that you think we will be able to see? Any amazing content ideas there?
Lots of interesting stuff bubbling with some new clients, new ways of working. I think one of the things I'm most excited about, we're actually internally within Virtue, where we're really sort of rethinking what we stand for and how we show up, and what we really want to stand for creatively. So lots of change, lots of new thinking coming into the team, and new energy and that sort of thing. And that's what I'm really excited about at the moment. This sort of momentum of being able to effectively future-proof the business, which is what we're doing right now, which is really exciting.
Awesome. This being March and Women's Month, of course, we again at Insider we do want to celebrate all the amazing women partners, leaders, professionals we work with. And one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to have you at this show was because you are a very well accomplished woman leader, but also a inspiration to other professionals, especially now that they're coming up in this space. What would your advice to them be at this point in time?
That's thank you. First of all, that's such a nice thing.
It's all true.
And it's so strange to have reached a point in my career that you can actually serve as an inspiration to others, and it's a real privilege. I think the biggest thing I would say, and what I really wish that I had realized a lot earlier on in my career, is that success doesn't look the same for everybody. And you don't need to measure yourself against other people's success. Being able to define what success means to you is so important, and following your own path to get there. I feel like I wasted a lot of time trying to measure myself up to other people's framework of success, and you're sort of in this crazy competitive race all of the time. And I think if I had been a little bit more confident in myself and what I wanted to achieve, rather than sort of the societal pressures, I would have sort of, I don't want to say found peace, but I would have been more at ease with some of the decisions that I took and the way that my career unfolded. So I think for me that's the biggest thing. You know, don't measure yourself against other people. You know, really try and find what matters to you and measure yourself against that.
Amazing advice. In fact, that's one of the advices I do give my kids. And I think a lot of it also comes back down to schooling systems, right? Where you are meant to compete for that first rank, the ranking system.
Yeah.
And everyone looks at the ranking system as your metric for success, which I think is something we should also be changing away from, and you know, kind of celebrating the successes, the small accomplishments to the big accomplishments each person has. Well said. Well said.
I think. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I really do think that's important, and it's one of the things that I've been really actively trying to work on with myself, is exactly as you describe it, celebrating those smaller successes along the way, rather than that sort of one big benchmark. And yeah, really defining your own frame and your own framework of success. It's hard to do, and it's something that I have to continue working on with myself. It's very, very easy to continue to get caught up in that sort of competitive mindset. And I'm a very competitive person. There's no way around it. But you can kind of use that as a motivator, or you can use it as a stick to beat yourself with. And it's I spent too long using it as a stick, and now I'm beginning to understand how to use it as a motivator, and also to motivate other people.
Awesome. Any sports you play? Anything you'd be very competitive about?
I am wildly competitive about tennis, which is ironic because I am a terrible tennis player. In my head, I am extraordinary, and my brother and I get into quite heated tennis matches. When I go home, he absolutely lets me win because he knows that that's just best for family peace, and I admire that about him.
Is he your older brother?
Older, yeah. He and my sister and nieces are all out in New Zealand.
God bless. God bless.
So he's looking out me after all of these years and letting his little sister win.
Shout out to your brother and sister and say, hey. Again, when I play tennis or any sport for that matter, I think I play like the pros, though in reality I play horribly in most games. But you know, that's just the play by play in our heads. What is the biggest leadership challenge that you're facing right now, especially during these times, and because you're in this very unique position?
You know, I think, look, it really is very simply just keeping people motivated and engaged through this next set of lockdown. I think we all sort of walked into 2021 thinking that things would change or be different. You know, everyone limped through to the end of 2020 and wanted this switch to be flipped into 21, and of course it hasn't been. And I think, in a strange way, that's almost been harder for people than sort of the first few months of all of this happening, because the end doesn't really feel in sight. It's starting to with the vaccinations, but not in a meaningful way just yet. And I think sort of helping people through that emotionally is a really, really critical part of my role at the moment. And, you know, as I mentioned before, I think virtue is in a time of change, and it's very, very positive change. You know, it's building the agency of the future. But change is always hard, and I think that particularly when you don't have that mechanism of being in the office and everyone just being able to let off steam in the same way and that sort of thing, things do build up. So it's really keeping a very close eye on that and making sure that we're taking all of the steps that we can to help people feel sort of secure and supported, and that they've got somewhere to turn to is really important. And I think on a longer term level, it's exactly what we're in the middle of now, sort of future-proofing the business. I think the industry, the communications industry in particular, changes so quickly. You have to really be able to sort of see around corners and anticipate what's coming next. And building a team that's resilient and that can see around those corners and shapeshift with them is I think the sort of longer term view that I'm working on at the moment.
Hashtag mental health. I love that. And it is something I think a lot of leaders are taking very seriously. And I think it's an amazing thing when you are talking about it on how you are, taking care of this particular aspect for your colleagues, for your peers. Resilience, right? This is the time of our lives where resilience is something that we all need to inspire towards and at least, work towards ourselves. Looking at your first job, what was your first job? And are there any lessons you take from that you've always implemented in your life?
Yeah, I think actually my very, very first job was a paper round when I was 11 or 12, which I loved, but I'm not sure how many lessons I learned there.
Were you on those cycles? Were you on those lovely cycles throwing paper at, into people's houses?
I really was, except we weren't allowed to throw the paper. We had to get off and put it in the letterbox. But the principle is there. And actually, I loved it. It really did instill in me the sort of the discipline of work, actually. And I felt like such a grown-up when I was out at 11 on my bike throwing papers. But no, I guess my first sort of career job, for want of a better word, was at this wonderful, wonderful agency in Auckland, New Zealand, which is where I'm from. And it was really interesting. I joined as a secretary. I was halfway through studying, and I'd always been really interested in the advertising industry. And this job was advertised, and it was in the newspaper back in those days. And I saw it and applied for it and got it. And I actually left my studies to go and do it. And it was the most wonderful environment to walk into, this incredibly creative, innovative agency. It was back then, it still is today. It's one of those extraordinary agencies that has continued to succeed over time. But it was full of people that loved what they did, that were really inspired by everything that they did, that was sort of hungry, that were always looking for more. And I think it really showed me what a workplace could be, and what innovation looked like, and really what a creative industry looked like. It completely spoiled me. They were extraordinarily supportive. I think I truly did join as a secretary, and they did everything they could to open up opportunities for me and to let me grow and expand my role and my remit. And I think I learned there that there is being hungry and seeking out your own opportunities and sort of really always pushing a little bit more really does go a long way. And it kind of helps you, it helps the people around you. But you don't, you can start in very simple roles. And if you have the right attitude towards things, there's always opportunity to grow and move forward and progress.
Awesome. Can I ask you the name of the agency itself?
Yeah, it was Colenso BBDO. So they're
Colenso.
Yeah.
Oh, they're part of the BBDO family.
They are. Yeah. So there's the Clemenger network down in Australasia, and Colenso is part of that family.
Brilliant. And what are your hopes for the future here? We have spoken of this adventure. We've spoken of the challenges that come with it. We've spoken of, being in lockdown, hoping that everything would have finished in 2020. It's not. We are going into not just the third month, going into almost a fourth month right now, and we're still not seeing the end. What
Yeah.
is your hope for the future?
I think it is to continue to be inspired and challenged by what I'm doing. For me personally, both by what I'm doing and the people that I'm surrounded with and surround myself with, and also to act as inspiration and hope for others, to be able to provide a path forward and a team and a structure for people. I think the other thing that I think has weighed heavily on all of us over the past year is or what has really come to light for a lot of us, I think, is the inequality that a lot of our colleagues and friends have faced. And I have to admit to myself now that I've been part of that problem. Certainly never deliberately, but just by not being active or vocal enough in fighting against equality and not against fighting against equality, fighting for equality, both gender equality, racial, everything. And I think that's something that my eyes have really been opened over the past year, about how much work is needed there, and how actively we have to engage with it. So that for me is something that is very, very important, that as I look towards the future, it's something that I continue to fight and be a much better ally for people.
I want to add one thing to that, because I love, how companies themselves are becoming more active in this space, how they are becoming not just vocal, but creating impact and action. One of the drivers for BTT has always been, showcasing these exceptional professionals across the board. Doesn't matter which geography you're from, doesn't matter which race or creed you're from. It just matters that you are doing an amazing job. And with that, we of course wanted to showcase amazing professionals like yourself. And we do believe in the gender diversity inclusion side of it, not just to our guest board, but also within Insider. There are active programs on these things. So as a leader, do you work towards, and do you also, kind of create conversation around that diversity, that upskill movement, where a lot of people have said, oh, but there's not enough skill set. That's not true. There's not enough skill set because we have not supported it yet. So is that something you are actively doing within the community you're in right now?
Yeah, and I think it's hard because all of that stuff, of course it is. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. All of that stuff comes up. You have open roles. You very rarely have a luxury of a lot of time to fill them, and so you find yourself in a position of sort of filling them with the people that are in front of you, rather than sort of going out and seeking out more diverse candidates. It's something that has been very real for me recently, where we haven't been able to find diverse candidates. And so we've sort of found ourselves in the situation where we're continuing to search in the background, we're maybe freelancing roles so that we can fill things permanently in a different way. But you also realize that that you've got to really focus, and you've got to keep everyone around you focused on doing it differently. And one of the things that I've been talking to our leadership team within the business about is how we can make more of a difference in the people that are coming up and into the industry. That's, I think, where we felt like we can all make a really tangible difference very, very quickly in sort of opening our doors a bit and starting to support and mentor people that are coming into the industry, so that we don't, it's a longer term play, of course it is, but then you do have a different set of people that have the experience and are able to step into those roles over time.
All the best with that, and I do pray and hope that in a year's time, you're sharing with us a lot of these accomplishments because you've put these programs in place.
Yeah, I really hope so. We have to. There is just no choice anymore. That's the thing that up until this past year or 18 months, I don't think I had realized the urgency of it.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to admit, actually. It's a hard thing to confront about yourself. It's much, much clearer now, and there is still, for myself, a ton of work to be done. But one of the things I have really loved about actually being within the Vice group is the emphasis that we have as a group with, on really changing the way that we do things. We have extraordinary people that are leading programs to change the way that we think about diversity, the way that we interact with each other, the way that we bring people into the business. And it's a real priority. It doesn't feel like it's sort of lip service to it. There's change that's really being felt in the organization. And that for me has made a real difference to the way that I'm then able to impact things on a more day-to-day level, because there is that real emphasis and drive towards it within the organization.
Thank you. Thank you. Last question for you. What was the proudest moment in your life?
That's such a I think to come back to what we were talking about earlier, I really have tried very hard over the last few years to change that framework around success and to enjoy more of the day-to-day successes. But if I think back, I think probably my proudest moment, I spent a number of years ago now, I spent a year in Africa. So I took some time out of my career. I worked on a safari camp for 6 months, and then I backpacked through Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Namibia, and I was camping a lot of the time. It was proper sort of backpacking, and I was a little bit older, quite a lot older, in fact, than most of the people on the same trip, and it was quite lonely at times as a result. But every day that it was lonely, and that could make it tough. You sometimes felt quite isolated from things. But every day that I spent there, I had so many extraordinary adventures and saw so much stuff, and just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. And even in the tough times, it really, really made me realize what I was capable of, and it pushed me so far outside of my comfort zone. I think we talk in a professional sense about coming outside of our comfort zone. This was a whole different way of thinking about it, and it really tested my limits and let me sort of push beyond them, I guess. And I look back at that time and realize how much I grew and learned through that whole experience.
Would you do it again if you had a chance?
In an absolute
Awesome.
Yes, and awesome. I would recommend everyone do the same thing if they have the opportunity.
Susan, you have been an amazing guest, and thank you for sharing so many different sides of you, different parts of your life, both personal, both professional. And again, wishing you the best, and I hope to keep in touch with you, through the duration of 2021 and forwards, just to see how we are all being formed, shaped, reshaped, and forged into this new, I guess, new generation of professionals coming out of this pandemic.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Wonderful way to start the week.
Thank you. Thank you. And for those of you who are watching us right now, you've heard it straight from Susan Pratchett. Today, we are coming to you live every Thursdays, 5 p.m. Singapore time, 10 a.m. CET. That'll change soon enough with daylight savings. But yes, if you are interested to join our show, please do drop us a quick message on YouTube or DM us directly on LinkedIn. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy.